Hello, you're listening to Digital Disruptors, a PMW mini-series featuring winners from this year's 30 Under 30 Performance Marketing Awards and addressing the gap between this generation and ones that have been in the industry years and years before them. In this episode, I'm joined by Olivia Tutton, Senior Campaign Director at the GOAT Agency, and Sophie Somers, Director of Paid Social at Journey Further. We spoke about the rise and fall of social media platforms, influencers finding new ways to connect with audiences, and the difference between chasing trends and understanding culture. It's an episode you won't want to miss, so stay tuned. Olivia, Sophie, thank you for joining me on the podcast. Today we're talking about social media and influencers, which I think could not be more of a perfect topic to talk to with 30 Under 30 winners, because we're the demographic that grew up in the age of social media. I mean, I'm 25 as well, so I've also grown up in that age and was on Instagram and Twitter before I was allowed to be on Instagram and Twitter and making accounts and connecting with friends and family. So we know a lot about this part of the industry. How do you think that's shaped your approach to performance marketing compared to previous generations?
I think we can adapt a little bit quicker. I think if you take social media platforms, the younger generations are more open to testing new platforms. You'll see the rise of Be Real. Threads, I think, had 30 million active users on the first day when that launched, which is actually wild if you think about it. So I feel like adapting to change is something that comes naturally to the younger generation. And I think that's why we sort of jump on those social media trends a little bit quickly.
I agree with that. That is a very good tie into my next question, which was going to be about the rise and fall of platforms and how we can adapt to that compared to how maybe older marketers or just in general older generations adapt to that. So I mean, currently in the US, there's a risk of TikTok being banned. That's still on a pause for the moment, but I've seen a lot of people online kind of freak out about that happening. A lot of marketers freaking out as well. But I mean, for us, we kind of saw a lot of social media platforms that went viral just have their peak and then die. Platforms like Vine and maybe Snapchat as well, because not so many people are using Snapchat. How do you prepare for these shifts in a way that's different than older generations do?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point. With the slightly younger generation, they are a little bit more agile, and as you were saying, they can kind of switch their brains, and especially with trends, they're a lot more easy to follow. I don't know, with that older demographic, I think there is that element of fear in them, and they don't like change, and they do take a little bit longer to kind of get used to the change. And like you said, we have seen it in the US at the moment when everyone thought TikTok were going to be banned, and you saw influencers immediately jumping on YouTube Shorts, Reels, Follow My Snapchat. They had immediately gone to the other platforms to kind of move their audience over to them. And I think that's really the difference, is that especially in our younger generation, we're fine with switching platform. We're not, I don't think we're too tied to just one. And if TikTok was banned tomorrow, there'll be another one that crops up next month, and everyone will easily jump on that. Like you said, Threads was a big one. Be Real was pretty much everywhere for fair enough a short space of time, but it was still there. So I think, with the younger demographic, I think they're more just tied into the creator themselves and actually who they're following, and they're almost just going to follow them where they go. Whereas that older demographic, I think it feels like such a big change, and actually it's not. Things change all the time. Vine comes and Vine come and went, and the same with others.
I mean, Vine influencers, ended up transitioning to TikTok,
exactly,
or to Instagram. So, I remember when TikTok first started becoming very popular, I would see a lot of Viners.
I remember seeing a lot. Be like, I remember you. Yeah,
and it was so nice actually seeing that. I also think there's one other trend in social is the resurgence of older platforms, and I think that's going to become more and more popular. So platforms like Facebook and Snapchat are likely to be making a comeback, which I mean, I don't really use Facebook anymore. I don't use Snapchat anymore. But I can kind of understand why they might be coming back in a way where it's similar to like when you talk about vintage clothes, for example, and you see like trends, 90s trends coming back and the 2000s, it's kind of similar with social. Where do you think that's coming from, and how are you planning to prepare for that?
I hear all the time like Facebook's dead, Snapchat's dead, and actually it's just different audiences who are sitting on there. And I would never recommend to a brand to never use Facebook, for example. There is a slightly older demographic there, but the targeting abilities that Facebook still have are way stronger than any other platform that we're still working across. And same with Snapchat. I don't personally use Snapchat, but if you speak to anyone probably 5 years younger than us, it's all they sit on. So it's kind of looking at what audiences we're trying to target. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if, Snapchat makes a big comeback, if that's what we want to call it. But I don't think they were kind of ever dead to the water anyway. They were always there. Yeah. It's just probably our age group at the moment just aren't sitting on Snapchat. I mean, I remember having it, I think, when I was like 16 and haven't really visited it since. But everyone uses it as like a chat platform. I speak to like my cousins and especially that younger demographic, and God, they don't use WhatsApp because that's so not cool, but they're on Snapchat. It's a different audience. So
yeah, it's changed a lot, I think. Yeah. And they've made a lot of changes to the paid capabilities as well, so I think that's helping them with their resurgence. Sure. But they've got some niche audiences. So I was talking to our Snapchat rep a couple of weeks ago, and the audience in the Middle East is really big and up and coming on Snapchat. So if you do have a client that is operating in the Middle East, it might be worth just having a look at getting Snapchat on your media plan. But yeah, I do think the younger demographic are quite loyal to that platform, and they just use it, like you said, for the messaging. Yeah. And they're so engaged on it because that's the only platform that they're speaking to. Yeah.
And like Snapchat's paid capabilities are also incredibly strong. And I don't think, again, brands probably just don't know how to use it or how to utilise it. So it wouldn't surprise me if we do see a lot more brands shift to the likes of Snapchat this year.
Probably also like a positive reflection on the brands as well, because there's kind of, in the past few years, there's been almost like a hyper focus on Gen Z demographics and finding out where all the Gen Z and millennial audiences are, but maybe them expanding into Snapchat a bit more and Facebook, where Snapchat has, like you said, audiences that might be 5 years younger than us, and Facebook has all of our parents are probably on Facebook, that's like a much older demographic, and it's a good thing to be looking at different audiences rather than restricting yourself to just Gen Z. I want to talk about influencers a little bit and kind of how influencers have changed over the years. So I think my first introduction to influencers was YouTube, because I used to watch YouTubers a lot and I loved them. But now it's gone to a place where it's expanded. Influencers are expanding beyond social media, and they're launching their own podcasts, they're hosting live events, and they're building their own community spaces, things like run clubs, they're leading those, or meetup groups. So what do you think this shift in influencers is going to tell us about where brand partnerships are going to be headed in the next few years?
I think influencers have got very smart very quickly, and they're creating a brand for themselves. And I genuinely believe that in a couple of years' time, we're going to see even more of this, a lot more brand collaborations, ambassadorships, more of that long-term partnership. I mean, I always use like Sophia and Cinzia as an example. I sort of follow them on YouTube religiously, their vlogs, and God knows what else they used to do. But now they're two influencers who not only have a podcast, they're touring. I think they're in Australia at the moment. Like they've really taken a brand and built like you said, a community, and they've really kind of like understood what their audience wanted. And I think an audience now wants to get to like the nitty gritty and under the skin of an influencer and really understand, what they love, what they don't. And I think having that one-on-one conversation with them, and whether that is, a live show or a run club, it makes the audience feel way closer to them. Like I said, they're building a brand. And I think they're just thinking a little bit more long term. Like, we've spoken about platforms changing, or, you know, we're seeing like differences in algorithms all the time, and new processes coming in on platforms. And I think they're almost building things outside of a platform to almost just support a bit more of like a career for them. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, completely. And I think with the shift in platforms, they need to have that stability around them.
Yeah.
Take Zoe Haig, for example.
Yeah.
You now associate Gymshark with her and that run club event that she did. I think it was Oxford Street. And brands are quite savvy. If they're going to get involved with that, then they can build a bit more of a influencer strategy outside of just the social media platforms.
No, exactly. They're tapping into audiences, you know, beyond their capabilities, I think. And yeah, I mean, Zoe Haig, I think, is a brilliant example. If I was to speak about her now, I wouldn't even call her an influencer. She's like a brand ambassador, especially for like Gymshark, My Protein. Like, she seems to be like the face of them, and she's like the source of their community, I feel.
I think she's authentic as well, which helps,
sure.
because she's into high rocks and everything like that, isn't she? So I think her partnering with those kind of brands makes it more authentic than disingenuous when people just partner with brands because they want to get a payday.
I think influencers are thinking about it a lot more.
Yeah.
They're really considering what brands are going to tie into, you know, what they believe in and what's going to be authentic to them.
If brands are looking at creating long-term sustainable social media strategies, should they be looking more at where their influencers are taking their audiences and kind of sticking to the influencers and building connections with them rather than focusing on the social media platform? Because, you know, social media platforms are a bit more unreliable, but influencers, like we said with Vine, are going to take their audience wherever they go. So do you think that's where brands should be focusing, or should it be a bit of a balance of both?
I do think it needs to be a little bit of a balance of both. I wouldn't tell a brand, put all your eggs in one basket, trust this influencer's audience and you'll be absolutely fine. You know, you're going to see X amount of delivery, because we know that there are positives and negatives across all of the platforms, right? So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say just follow the influencer, because then you're missing audiences potentially across our other platforms.
Yeah, I think that can be quite risky as well if you just, like you say, put your eggs in one basket. But I think the audience piece is key. So knowing where your audience are, not just testing a platform because everybody else is. Like, your audience might not be on that platform. So just making sure you are doing that audience analysis, understanding what platforms they are across, and tapping into that more so than just where the influencers are.
One thing that I also wanted to touch on is the difference between chasing trends and understanding culture on social media. So I think we see it a lot more now, where something will go viral and you'll see a bunch of like brands commenting under or trying to follow the same trend, but doing it in a way that comes off a little bit cringy. I think Duolingo was one of the first people to do it, but Duolingo actually did it right because it stuck to that authentic voice and tone of brand. And it's kind of just known for being chaotic on social media now. So whenever I see Duolingo doing it, I find it funny. But if I see, say, like a luxury brand trying to do the same trends as Duolingo, it does come off as a bit cringe. So do you have any examples of where brands got it wrong? And what do you think brands can learn from the ones that have truly gotten it, have truly understood what it means to have culture and social?
We've had a lot of conversations with our brands on this, and you know, the first thing a brand always says to us is, we want to go viral, we want to jump on a trend, we need to be more agile when doing this. And actually, I think it's sitting back and understanding what their tone of voice is and what messaging they want to portray. Are you a more comedic band like Duolingo or a Ryanair? Can you be a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, or are you a little bit more serious? And, you know, I think it's, again, we're going back to this audience, but understanding who you're targeting and who's actually following you, because I'd never recommend jumping on a trend where humour is at the forefront of it if that's not your tone of voice, because no one's really going to engage with it. No one's going to care. Like, it's, you know, I think it's one of those, just kind of understanding your tone of voice and having that throughout your brand. And a lot of brands get this really, really wrong. And I think Duolingo could get away with it. They are very chaotic and, you know, they have a tone of voice, but they haven't at the same time. but we expect that from them. I think if another brand was to do that, it would be quite confusing to a lot of the consumers.
Yeah, I agree. I think Aldi, as an example, do it really well.
Yeah.
They are a chaotic brand as well. And the whole Cuthbert and Colin debate, M&S, I don't think got involved with that because that isn't their tone of voice, and they are a bit more of a luxury retailer. So I think they got it right by not engaging with that and jumping on that trend. I think there is a role for trend jacking, but I think you've just got to make sure it aligns to your tone of voice and it's not cringeworthy, and it does resonate with the audience that you're going after.
There's also a fact of like brands jump on trends almost too late, and then you're like, you're really late to the party. Like you almost just shouldn't have bothered. Trends come and go, and you either have to be on it within the first 24 hours, if not less, or I just wouldn't bother at all.
Or add on to it as well, not just to kind of like jump on it, but also add more things to it and kind of make yourself a real leader in that conversation rather than a follower.
And I think it's like, does it align with your strategy? Like every brand has to have a strategy across, whether that's, you know, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Like if it doesn't align with it, don't do it. A lot of brands fall into a habit of chasing views and things like that, but it's actually not really what their audience want to see.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of it has to do with kind of just assumptions that marketers make around social media without actually being on social media. I'll hear a lot of people talk about what's trending now, what are the top things we should be engaging with, but they don't have a TikTok account. They've never had a TikTok account, and they've never actually been in that community space on their own and understood what those audiences want. They just made their own assumptions. What kind of misconceptions do you think brands and marketers have about social media? I mean, I covered the Journey Further report on consumer behavioral targeting as opposed to generational targeting. One of them was talking about how Gen Z doesn't only prioritize authenticity. There's other stuff that they prioritize as well. So along those lines, what kind of misconceptions do you see?
Misconceptions. A lot of brands worry about following on TikTok, and I think it's always like, oh, we want 100,000 followers by the end of the year. And it's like, well, that's fine if that's a KPI, but how are we going to get there? And if you're not engaging with your community and producing content, again, which aligns with your audience and aligns with the brand, following on TikTok almost, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it's a metric that I would say is almost the least important. Actually, it's the engagements and it's the likes, the comments, the shares. That's where you're really going to start building a community.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree. I think there's some influencers across TikTok that, well, I don't follow because the algorithm is so good at just showing me the content that I want to see.
TikTok.
You don't need to follow. So some influencers can have a smaller following but really good engagement, whereas there's some influencers that have got really high following but not as good engagement. So like you've just said, I would definitely look at the engagement over the follower count.
One of the conversations about working with influencers is kind of allowing them to have creative control over their own briefs rather than allowing a brand to write up that script for them. So how can brands balance doing that while also keeping their own identity in there?
I think this really ties into that younger to older marketeer difference. I think with an older marketeer who has probably sat more in like the traditional marketing space where they've had way more control over a TV script or, you know, an ad that goes out. I think that's where we do see a few problems, is letting go of that control and really treating influencer as its own platform. And I think if you are looking to write an influencer a script or tell them line by line on what to do, influencer probably isn't the right channel for your brand right now. More so because influencers know their audience way better than we do. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with giving an influencer a brief, you know, with key messaging. That's what we would do with a brand, right? But telling them what to do line by line isn't really what we should be doing. You need to put trust in your influencer. Like I said, they know the audience way better than anyone else. So we need to allow them to do that. And that's why you're going to see that higher engagement rate, because they're talking to the people that they know.
Yeah, I think an audience can pick that out from an influencer's content straight away if it's scripted, because they engage with that audience. I think a good example of authenticity from an influencer perspective is Zoe Sugg and the Liz Earle example. Yeah. She, in a recent vlog, put clips from, I don't know how many years ago it was, but when she first started engaging with that brand, and that really shows the authenticity and that she actually does engage with that product and she does like that product. But if you start telling influencers they need to mention the brand within the first 3 seconds, which obviously we'd love from a paid perspective, but it doesn't work that way, then it just looks disingenuous and audiences just won't engage with it.
Yeah, audiences are smart now. They're way smarter than what they were 5-6 years ago. I think if we were looking at influencer marketing back then, it was, you know, holding up teeth whitening strips with a smile and saying, you know, use my code to get £30 off. Whereas now we really want influencers to be engaging with the product, using it, and actually just, having that more like authentic feel and having a bit of a story behind it. I think everyone wants to know a story and wants to know why they're using it and what the benefits are. And as much as we would love in the first 3 seconds, it's very unlikely when we see that now, especially from an organic perspective. It's kind of a little far between.
You both had quite big smiles when I brought up this question, so I'm assuming it's a topic that you have to repeat over and over in your day-to-day. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of education I still think around this with a lot of brands. It's scary and it's almost ripping that band-aid off and allowing brands to, you can still have control to a degree, but you know, just let the reins off a little bit and let them do what you're paying them to do. Otherwise, you don't use influencers, you might as well put your money elsewhere.
I want to ask about your roles as well in the performance marketing industry, because I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that we're very much the demographic that grew up in the age of social media. Do you think younger performance marketers are being siloed into those social media roles and maybe not being given as much leadership opportunities? Or are you finding that you're being given a lot more trust because you've grown up in this kind of like digital age?
I think we are given more trust. I started paid social 8 years ago, fresh out of uni. Didn't actually really know what marketing was, to be honest. I went for a grad job. And I think because the channel has evolved so much and there's more trust in the channel now, especially from a paid perspective, it is seen as like a performance marketing channel. Mm-hmm. Whereas previously, probably when I first started, it wasn't taken as seriously. I think measurement and things like that has come on leaps and bounds, which means that we can show the true value of social. So I think because there's more trust in the channel, I think there's then more opportunities for the likes of us to progress and get into leadership roles because it is becoming more of a thing. And I'd say like marketing directors are understanding the channel a little bit more and putting more emphasis on it.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. I've been in the industry now for 7 years, so like very similar time, and if I was to compare coming in there to where we are now, you know, the budgets that brands are putting into influencer is way bigger than what we have ever experienced, and that's really grown in the last couple of years. So I do think now that a lot more, especially marketing directors, are understanding the role of influencers, there definitely are a lot more leadership roles, I think, out there. If I was to compare what was out there 7 years ago, there were little to none. It wasn't really a platform anyone took seriously. Whereas now I think a lot more brands are understanding this is where most of your audience are probably sitting, and you know, while you're putting millions into a TV ad, unfortunately everyone is currently sitting on their phones scrolling. So I think that's really the shift that a lot of brands have realised.
Do you find that when you're working in those teams, those social media teams, that the people that you're surrounded by in those similar roles are all within the same age range, or are there some older marketers that are working in social media in this side of the industry? And if there isn't any older ones, do you think that could be a potential issue where maybe you're then missing out on a huge chunk of your audience, of older audiences, by not having, the marketers behind them reflect the ones that they want to target?
At our company, we've got a real mixture. I mean, the average age, I think, is currently still like 27 or 28. So we are still under 30. I wouldn't say a huge portion of that older marketeer. There are definitely some, but it is a younger team. It's a younger audience who we're working with. So yes, potentially we are missing that slightly older demographic and just that area of expertise.
Yeah, I think from a paid side of things, we probably are about 25 to 35, maybe up to 40. And I think what I've seen is that there's more people who started off in PPC moving into paid social, and therefore, because PPC is an older channel, those people are slightly older, but I agree, I think it is still going to be a younger demographic and probably will be for a while.
I think what's really interesting is seeing the Gen Zs come through now, especially, a lot of our team are quite junior. They've just finished uni. It's a completely new perspective that we're also seeing there. So that's also been quite interesting to see just the difference, again, with like how they communicate, and they had to download WhatsApp because they've never used it before and things like that. So there's almost a really, really big gap now between us and them.
And having that perspective of a younger team and being majority under the age of 30, when you look at your audiences on social media, are you thinking of targeting just younger audiences, or are you just focusing on targeting the audiences that the brands want to target?
It really depends on the brand that we're working with. If they are skewing to a slightly older audience for whatever reason, we are always looking at ways on, are we actually missing that younger audience? So, if we have a cleaning brand or a beauty brand who are skewing more to, like 35 plus, we would always challenge them to be like, why are you segregating such a huge audience who are actually predominantly sitting on social? So I would always say challenge your brand on, if they're only targeting, and again, if they're only targeting the audience up to 30, they're then potentially missing a huge chunk on top of that. It really is understanding your brand's wants, needs, and who they are actually targeting.
100% agree. Yeah. You've got to challenge that audience that the brand think is their audience, because often there's pockets where you can tap into that are untapped at the moment. So definitely say challenge.
Great, I like that. What's one piece of advice you'd give to brands that are looking to stay ahead in the evolving social media landscape?
Don't be afraid of change, and listen to your social media marketing agency.
I would say keep on top of trends, but don't jump on trends that don't align to your brand. So make sure you've got your finger on the pulse to see where you can tap into that, but don't just tap into it for the sake of it.
Okay, so we have a fun little game to play at the end of the episode. So it's Myth or Fact, Social Media and Influencer Edition. And this is just to, test your skill sets. That's how much you know. But also it's mostly just to reveal some more interesting facts. So the first one is, more followers equals more impact. Myth or fact?
Myth.
That is a myth. Why did you think it was why are you so confident that it's a myth?
I think we touched on this a little bit in the episode earlier on, but again, it's really focusing on that engagement. Followers, it doesn't have a big impact. TikTok, especially if we're looking at that, it's not really a metric I would even tell brands to focus on. It's that engagement, those likes, those comments, those saves, those views, how you engage with your audience. Yeah.
I think when we amplify influencer content across paid as well, the following doesn't matter. It's as long as that content is engaging, the audience is going to engage with it, and it doesn't matter how big their following is.
And it's like TikTok's so different. The follower rate on TikTok is so much lower than Instagram. It's a completely different platform format, and I think brands kind of need to remember that.
I've never ever looked at the follower count of an influencer on TikTok. No. I used to do it with YouTube, where I'd follow a YouTuber and I'd look at how many subscribers they've got, and they'd make a big deal out of it. It's like, we reach 100k and we get this award or whatever. But with TikTok and even Instagram, I've never looked at how many followers they had. It was more just like, did the algorithm bring that person to me at a time where I knew that algorithm knew that I was interested in that content, and that's what matters more.
Yeah. There's a lot of education, I think, that needs to be done with influencers as well, because a lot of them, they get stuck on the fact that they've got 20,000 followers or 30,000 and they want to, you know, get up to 100. And yeah, really it's just like building that community. And I suppose if you are really worried about following, it's creating content that gives people a reason to follow you. So, you know, if you're creating, I don't know, a 3-part story and you want people to follow along, then okay, that's a little bit of a smarter way of doing it if that's really your focus. But I personally wouldn't focus around it. I probably follow like 10 people on TikTok.
There's no need.
Yeah.
And the same for YouTube, actually. I don't actually subscribe to anyone, which is bad, but the suggestions just come up in your home screen when you go to YouTube anyway, so they know that you're engaging with that content and that you're going to want to watch that content. And if they're regular posters, you'll go up anyway just to go and watch them.
So engagement over followers. The second one, influencer trust can outperform traditional ads.
True, I think.
I don't know. I'm like on the fence. I think that could be true.
Why do you say it's true?
I think because consumers have a lot of trust in influencers if their content is authentic. So taking the Zoe Sugg example, I probably would go and buy that Liz Earle product now because she's tested it for so long. And if she's going to tell me what the benefits are, it's probably going to persuade me to go and buy that product and test it myself. Whereas if I'm just getting a Liz Earle ad, I don't think I'd be as inclined to go and purchase the product.
I do agree. I think if I was to look at 2 paid ads and I had one from Zoe that was using the Liz Earle product and then one potentially from the Liz Earle brand, I'd definitely be engaging more with an influencer who has a trusted voice, has used the product for years.
It's exactly that. It's about trust. 70% of millennials say they're more likely to trust a brand if it's endorsed by an influencer that they follow. So that was a fact.
Nice.
Influencer marketing isn't just for B2C.
Fact.
Anyone want to back it up?
I don't know why I'm so nervous about giving these answers. I feel like I'm going to lose my job.
Oh, well, actually, this is a performance review.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried about.
Get pulled into the office next week.
Is it fact?
It is fact. So it's while influencer marketing is often associated with B2C, over 80% of B2B marketers say they've used influencer marketing successfully.
Interesting.
The next one. Viral campaigns are the key to success.
Myth. Yeah. We've spoken a lot about this today. But going viral isn't the absolute epitome of success for a brand. And I know that was like a bit of like advice that we would give brands is that don't focus on that viral moment, actually focus on what's right for your brand and how you're going to build that community.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree, and you can go viral for the wrong reasons as well.
You really can. Yeah,
it's definitely not. Yeah.
Instagram stories drive higher engagement than posts.
Fact.
I
think you get more views and engagements on a story because people are in that story's placement a lot more. I think people just want full screen content. I will go to Instagram and go straight to the stories bar than to scroll through my feed.
Yeah, I did me too.
And I think you see less engagements on feed posts now for that reason.
I think in general, a lot, like the consumer at the moment just isn't really engaging with anything. I think we're a group of people who just like to look at things and we like to scroll and actually stopping commenting, liking. It's becoming a way lot less than what we've seen previously.
I mean, it's also, again, it goes down to the algorithm as well, because with Instagram, if you go onto someone's profile and you kind of like linger on that profile, then the next time you open the app, they'll be pushed towards the front. So they're one of the first people that you see. Yeah. And it's like you said, it's like the kind of age of doom scrolling where you just want things quick and just things to entertain you. You're right, that is a fact. Despite Instagram's algorithm prioritizing feed posts, data shows that Instagram stories have a 15 to 25% higher engagement rate than regular posts. So invest in your stories.
Some stories, people.
Well, that's all we have for today. Olivia, Sophie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Digital Disruptors. New episodes of the mini-series will continue to come out fortnightly alongside the main show, Performance Marketing Unlocked. So make sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you next time. This episode was produced by Nav Pal, Studio Manager at Haymarket.